Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is Talking Real Estate with Mark and Terry. I'm Mark Snipe of the Jim Allen Group at Coldwell Banker, Howard Perry and Walston.
And I'm Terry Carpenter with Howard Perry and Walston.
And today, Terry, we wanted to talk about the costs involved in the home buying process. Some of them hidden and some people may know about. But we really wanted to discuss the different expenses that you will incur on this journey.
Right. So there's lots of expenses that come down the pipe when you start to buy the home. There's the money you spend during the due diligence period. There's money for closing costs. And then we also want you to think about how much you're going to spend monthly after you own the home. Because depending on how much the loan is, just because a lender will lend you a certain amount of money doesn't mean that's really what you're comfortable with every month to pay.
Right. So, and that's a good point, because whatever the the lender says that you can afford doesn't necessarily mean you should max that out, because there are other expenses that you want to consider having money for.
Right.
The
lender doesn't think about they don't know about the child care maybe expense that you may have, or maybe your pet expenses, your credit card bills. Yes. Those things aren't factored in when the lender's determining how much money they'll loan you.
I could tell you about pet expenses. We just took Sully to the vet yesterday.
It adds up quick. So you need to be comfortable, with your monthly payment.
Right.
And that's not always, again, what the lender will loan you. You may be less. But that's the first step you kind of got to think of.
So I guess what we want to talk about is some of the other incidental expenses in addition to your mortgage that we think people should factor in, right? So let's start with before we get to closing, before we own the home, some of the expenses that will be incurred during the process.
Right. So say you found that home that you want to buy, you're in a contract to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And we have something called a due diligence period. And during that due diligence period, you want to do your home inspections. You want to check the house out and make sure that's something that you really want to buy.
Right.
So whether you're buying with cash or you're getting a mortgage, there's certain expenses that everybody's going to accrue during the due diligence period.
And in addition to, during the due diligence in North Carolina, you pay a due diligence fee. And that's negotiable, and it could be anywhere from $200 up to 1 or 2% of the purchase price. It's something that you will negotiate, and it's specific to each situation. We also have to pay an earnest money fee, and that's something in North Carolina, and that's generally between 1 and 3% of the home price. And again, that is something that you negotiate.
Right, it's part of the offer that you make.
Right.
Depending on what value you put there, it indicates the strength of your offer. You do get that money back if you make it all the way to closing.
Right.
You get a credit for both of those.
Right.
So a lot of people don't understand that. They think it's just money thrown away. The due diligence money is lost if you back out, but the earnest money and the diligence fee, if you make it all the way to closing, then you get credit for it.
You get it gets deducted from the purchase price.
Correct.
Right?
That's exactly right.
So when we put in an offer, it is accepted, we encourage everybody to get a home inspection, right? And so that can cost anywhere from
$600-700.
Right. Okay. So that's something that you want to factor in. You might get a pest inspection, and that's something that is often encouraged. And then, depending upon where you live, if you are in a more rural setting, you probably will have a septic tank, right. And so maybe you want to get a soil test or a perk test, and that costs some money. And then you also, depending upon your situation, we always encourage getting a survey done, right?
I do. I just feel like a survey is super important. A couple of things with that is you need to know your boundaries of the property.
Right.
Maybe down the road you want to put a fence or a storage building or something like that on the property, and the survey will help you understand what your borders are.
Right.
Another reason for the survey, and I run into this with a couple of transactions already, is the fact that there may be encroachments either with that property or the neighbor's property, and that kind of makes the delivering clear title, with encumbrances is
right,
hard.
right.
So it takes a lot of negotiating to get that
Yeah,
cleared out.
exactly.
But yeah, survey is always important. Again, back to that rural thing, you may have a well, you may want to test the well water.
Right.
May have to have the septic system, inspected, see how well it's working. If it's built before 1978, you may want to test for lead paint.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to, right? I think we would
Well,
strongly
we
encourage
would
it.
obviously
Yeah, yeah,
encourage it. I
yeah.
mean, but
And speaking of that, because I think we were talking offline, and you also, depending upon how old the HVAC system is, you might want to get an HVAC inspection. So
right.
I guess our point is you're in this due diligence period, and you really have this opportunity to ensure the house is up to spec for your specifications. And all of these inspections do cost money.
Yes.
And so it's something to factor in and to think about.
Correct.
Right? And you want to budget for that.
You got to budget for it because they add up. I mean, 650, 100 here, 100 there, it's $1,200-$1,500 all of a sudden you spent on inspections
Right.
and those kind of things, which is good because
Right.
you want an expert to take a look at the property
Right.
and see, how well it is. But you just got to remember this is money that you will not get back.
Right.
That you're spending this money.
And it's insurance, right? So it's you ensuring that the home is, like I said earlier, up to spec and there are no hidden problems. Or that's what you're trying to do, is to disclose any issues that you can then negotiate with the seller to fix or remedy, or give you concessions on the back end so that you can fix or remedy them, right?
Yep.
So, okay, so that's the process, and those are some of the costs in the journey. And then when we get to closing, there are a whole other set of expenses that we will have to factor in. So we just went through before you buy, and now we get to the closing table. And so there are certain expenses that you will incur during closing.
Right. You have your attorney fees. Maybe there's prorated HOA fees. There will be property taxes prorated. If you got a loan, you have
origination
fees, maybe points.
Right.
They're going to charge a report fee, credit report fees, things like that. That as a good lender would have helped you prepare for those costs.
Because you're going to have to bring that money to the table, and as Terry pointed out, the better the relationship that you have with your lender, which is why we always encourage working with a local lender, because you're going to have more one-on-one attention.
Right.
And so they will help you and guide you through this process and really inform you on what you'll need to bring to the closing table day of closing, because there are going to be some incremental costs. And they could be from 2% of the purchase price to 5%. And so that's something that you want to factor in and be aware of when you get to closing.
So now let's discuss a little bit about, you've finished closing, you have the keys to the house. Oh, you're a homeowner.
Right. Happy days. It is happy days.
It's a great day.
So you should go out for a celebratory dinner.
Correct.
But
be prepared, because the journey's just beginning.
Exactly. And so, one of the things, and Terry's been a homeowner for a long time, and we were just talking about when we first bought our homes, like many people, you think it's done, I'm good. But there are costs that sometimes you're not even aware of that you're going to have to spend, which is why I think at the beginning we talked about your mortgage broker will tell you how much home you can afford, but you don't always want to buy up to that amount, because you're going to have other costs, other monthly costs that you'll incur throughout your home ownership, right?
And so, I mean, that's the glory of owning, is it's yours, but it's also your responsibility.
Yes.
So that's something that we obviously preach to any renter that's now going to buy,
right?
Because you're going to see that there's upkeep, right? There's lawn maintenance, there's HVAC maintenance, there's appliances to keep repaired, plumbing, things that that before wrong. You just call the landlord and said, hey, and just said, hey, come fix this, and now all of a sudden it's your responsibility. And if you can't do it, then you got to pay somebody professionally to do it.
And I mean, Terry, I can't do anything. I am the least handy. Yes, I can't do anything, and so it adds up.
I'm glad you
quickly.
admitted that,
Yeah,
Mark.
no, I do. I mean, I have soft hands, so I mean, I am a person who is meant to call a plumber, an electrician, a handyman. I need to have all those people in my Rolodex because I will be constantly calling them out. Because if I were to try to fix something, it would just become exponentially more expensive, almost logarithmically
Oh,
more expensive. I don't know which one is more
I
expensive,
know
but
my limits. I'm
yeah,
not a
yeah,
plumber and I'm not an electrician, but I'll
yeah.
try. I'll try a lot of
Well,
things.
then,
But a lot of times I end up having to call a professional as well.
yeah,
So just keep that in mind. Again, just because you can get a big amount for the mortgage doesn't mean that's what you should really be comfortable spending total.
right, yeah. And so, just to kind of go back, you're going to have, in addition to just lawn care or landscaping or the plumbing, you also have HOA fees that you
Mm-hmm.
might have to incur. You're going to have your property taxes, utilities. There are going to be different costs that you want to consider in all seriousness. And depending upon where you live in the state of North Carolina, generally people say that maintenance can be between 2 and 3%. And there's been a recent research published that talked about how the cost of home ownership has increased, which I think we all know, but that the average maintenance cost for a home in North Carolina is about $14,000 a year, that's a hefty sum.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on where they're at. If
Right.
you have a septic tank and a well, there's added expenses a lot of
Right.
times that have to have flushed out or cleaned out. If you have an acre lot, then there's more to it. We have lots
Right.
of storms here, so we
Yeah.
all have shingle issues or roofing issues.
Right.
The HVAC, we have a hot summer and fairly mild winter, but the HVAC systems now are only lasting 10, 12, 14 years,
Mm-hmm.
and that is a huge expense. So yeah, you just need to be prepared as a
Right.
buyer, to know that home ownership isn't just my monthly payment. There's
Right.
other factors that you need to
Right.
consider.
And again, we're not trying to discourage. We're just trying to inform
All right.
because the last thing that you want is to get to the promised land and then realize, wow, there was something that you weren't expecting and that happened. And so,
Right.
just trying to inform. And so
Yeah.
if we kind of go
Be
back,
prepared.
yeah, it's all
Back
about
to
being
being
prepared.
prepared and
Right.
just understanding that, again, we're not trying to scare you, or this is,
Not at all.
property ownership is the greatest equity builder there is,
Right.
and in real estate. So that's one great achievement is to own real estate, but there are expenses.
That come along with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, like we talked about during the lead up, you're going to have some costs related to inspection, earnest money, due diligence fees. During closing, there will be costs, and then there are some costs after closing when you are the homeowner. And so, it's just factoring all of these in, just being aware of them so that you can budget more accordingly and be prepared, like Terry said.
Absolutely.
So hopefully you enjoyed this episode of Talking Real Estate with Mark and Terry. And we look forward to bringing these to you every month. And we look forward to our next one. I'm Mark Snipe.
And I'm Terry Carpenter.
And we look forward to chatting with you next time.
See you next time.
All right.
Thanks.